In light of eternity, was David justified in killing Goliath? Now, here's a recent question I've never been asked before or ever thought of myself. And as you may recall from the story of their hand-to-hand combat in 1 Samuel 17, David definitely had opportunity to spare Goliath's life after he hit Goliath in the head with a slingshot stone. The biblical account says that David had knocked the giant out, rendering him helpless. Then it happened when the Philistine rose and came and drew near to meet David, that David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet the Philistine. And David put his hand into his bag, took it from a stone, slung it, and hit the Philistine on his forehead. And the stone sank into his forehead, so that it fell flat on his face to the ground, probably knocked out. But there was no sword in David's hand. Then David ran and stood over the Philistine and took his sword and drew it out of its sheath and killed him. Friends, welcome to Bible Words. I'm Pastor Dave, your host. Thanks for tuning in as we answer, I must say, a most intriguing question about ancient battlefield rules of engagement, but also the greater question behind their fight, that of upholding God's reputation amidst the ancient pagan world. The concern reflected here behind our question is that of Goliath's eternal soul, of course. David, by killing him, eliminated any future possibility of Goliath having a change of heart toward Yahweh, the true and living God. So let's first consider the rules of engagement given to David by Goliath and ask what the stakes were and what alternatives would have been acceptable in that setting in our story. In our story, Goliath stood and shouted at the ranks of Israel and saying to them, "Why do you come out to draw up in battle array? Am I not the Philistine, and you servants of Saul? Consider a man for yourselves and let him come down to me, and if he is able to fight with me and kill me, then we will become your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then you shall become our servants and serve us." So what's happening here on this ancient battlefield? Well, an overly confident 9-foot-tall giant warrior named Goliath claims to be the Philistine army's champion and best fighter. He calls himself the Philistine. I'm the man. And he says, "Find your man and your best champion and come fight me in a one-on-one fight to the death, winner take all." The implication is let's not have a mass slaughter of both armies fighting against each other. Rather, one warrior from each army could represent the whole army in hand-to-hand combat. And whichever soldier killed the opposing soldier in a battle to the death would settle the war and determine the future destiny of both nations. Losers would become the winner's slaves. Of course, being a 9-foot-tall giant, Goliath was pretty confident which side was going to win the day. So let's just note that Goliath's rule of engagement didn't really give David a mercy option. Goliath was going to keep fighting, keep coming at David until he killed him by his own hand. Also, let's note why David was even fighting in the first place. In his explanation of this to King Saul, David said, "Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, since he has taunted the armies of the living God." And Saul said to David, "Go, and may the Lord be with you." You see, this battle between Goliath and David, it was more than just Israel's national defense against a neighboring pagan army. This was a spiritual contest. This was a definitive statement about God's very existence. David representing Yahweh, the God of Israel, while Goliath represented Dagon, the dung manure god, the god of flies that the Philistine nation worshiped as their national god. Whichever warrior triumphed was in the eyes of both armies and nations the defining testimony of which nation actually worshiped the true God. Goliath implied the same in cursing David. It says the Philistine cursed David by his gods, also saying to David, "Come to me and I will give your flesh to the birds of the sky and the beasts of the field." And Goliath in cursing David, and by implication Yahweh is God, by his own God Dagon, he's saying Dagon is the true God and he's going to help me triumph over you. David likewise saw this fight as a defining statement between the true Yahweh worshipers and the false idolatrous worship. David says to the Philistine, "You come to me with a sword, a spear, and a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have taunted. This day the Lord will deliver you up into my hands, that why? That all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel, the true God." So you see, this battle at this time in Israel's history was not about offering mercy or forgiveness. This fight was about the true worship of God's holy name and God executing judgment by David's hand on a pagan nation for dishonoring him with idolatry. And against impossible odds, that's exactly what happened. That was the outcome. God was honored in the sight of a pagan nation. Hey friends, thanks for watching. Please subscribe, share Bible words with your friends, send me your questions. I'll see you next week.